Well, everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to Wasteland Talks, my weekly talk show where I talk about whatever the hell I want. And this week, very unexpectedly, we have convened the album analysis crew for my new segment, Song Makes the Scene. And we start things off by talking about Stuck in the Middle with You from Stealers Wheel from Reservoir Dogs. And it's only fitting they got Jim and Alex here to talk some Tarantino. So, guys, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, man. Yeah, this is cool.
Thanks for having us. Yeah,
Out of
this
nowhere.
is fun.
Yeah, Alex appeared like an RKO. Out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. That's right.
But what we're going to be doing here on this little show is first time doing this. We're taking a song from a very iconic scene, talking about how we got introduced to this song in the first place. Could have been this scene. Could have been somewhere else. Give a little bit of background and what the setup for the scene is in terms of the film, why this scene is so significant in the film, and then talking about how's that scene just pull the room together. So I guess, Jim, how did you, from what you can recall, how did you first get introduced to the song Stuck in the Middle with You?
Yeah, it's hard to know, but I think my educated guess is that it was on the radio, 102.9 classic rock, WMGK, back in Philadelphia. That was a staple on that radio station. So I'm pretty sure I came to it that way. And then I think I saw Reservoir Dogs in like my early 20s. So I would have been familiar with the song already. But I didn't have any particular, I don't have any stories about it. Like I don't have any drug trips stories to tell you guys about Stealers Wheel. Like it's just a song that I was aware of. It's fun, you know? And in the scene is, I don't know, it's kind of nuts, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it was a radio hit by the time I came to it.
How about you, Alex?
It was the movie. It was the first time I heard it and from the movie. And I just looked it up. I said it came out in 1972, which makes sense because, right, it's K. Billy Super Sounds of the 70s. That's right. I've seen the movie enough times to know that. And so that makes a lot of sense. But it is like a pop song, you know? It's very poppy. It's very catchy. I mean, it's an earworm. I do remember, I think I covered the song. I was in a cover band my junior year at Bonaventure. Jim, you might have been there for one of those shows. We played Spring Weekend. I was in that cover band for just for one semester, and we covered this song. And it was an easy song to play. It's a fun song to play. But I came to it through the movie. And I just thought it was a catchy song, fun song to dance to. I remember in high school after I discovered Reservoir Dogs, and I don't know how my music teacher just didn't care. We got away with showing this in school, and like the kids, everybody who was into music would start like moving their feet and moving their knees when the scene came on. They're not like horrified by what's on the screen. They're like dancing to the song. So
Hey, Mr. Blonde felt the vibe.
he obviously did. So yeah. So that's my experience.
It's interesting because I definitely heard it plenty of times on 1029 WMGK in Philadelphia, and probably also 98.1 WOGL. 60s and 70s Motown soul and rock and roll, because it's light enough to be on 98.1, because like their rock and roll is a lot more like Billy Joel and Creedence kind of rock and roll, and like at least MGK now actually plays like AC/DC. They didn't even do that originally a whole lot. But I had a whole 70s music collection that I bought from Walmart, and it was on there. So I definitely heard this song a lot growing up. It was one of those weird things where like some of the songs in that collection that I got from Walmart were the actual recordings, and some of them were like ever so slightly off covers that you could kind of tell are a cover, but they didn't actually get the rights to like the actual band to do it.
I see.
Because
Yeah.
like it was like 40 songs for $8. So you know what you're probably getting. But I didn't watch Reservoir Dogs until college. So I had definitely heard the song before and just like, this scene. So if you haven't seen Reservoir Dogs, it is Quentin Tarantino's directorial debut about this group of criminals who get brought together for a job and told non-linearly, and they wind up getting caught in this warehouse trying to figure out what the hell happened. And one particular scene is Mr. Blonde, Michael Madsen's character, Tarantino staple, shows up and has a cop with him and straps him to a chair and decides to do some mutilation to his ear. This is probably one of the most famous scenes from this movie. And of course, this sick, sadistic bastard's dancing away to Stuck in the Middle with You as he's like dancing up to this cop and gonna cut his ear off. So that's kind of like this scene and set. Why is this scene so iconic and important to Reservoir Dogs?
It is the scene that everybody talks about. I think even Sofia Coppola had a movie that came out, and later on in the '90s, and they talk about the scene. And it's definitely the scene that stands out. I think they released a DVD, much later on, and it was shaped like a gas can, because of this scene. So it's definitely the one that stands out from the movie. It's probably the most violent, and it's certainly the most shocking scene of the film.
100%, definitely most shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I can't tell, and I can't remember like my initial reaction to the scene. I know I watched Reservoir Dogs at the suggestion of a coworker, so I might have still been a teenager because I was working in a restaurant, and Mr. Pink in the beginning, it's the opening scene. I think he's like, "I don't tip," refuses to tip the waiter. So this was like a big thing because I worked in a restaurant and we were all having a conversation about this movie. I'd never seen it. So I think it was on TV one night, and I watched it, but I'd seen this scene before.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, probably YouTube. I couldn't tell you why. And I was probably really conflicted and couldn't decide how to feel about it because it is kind of funny in that the music doesn't fit the content, like it doesn't match at all. In like kind of like a Scorsese way, like he'll put on some doo-wop song and somebody will be getting horrifically murdered and background. So maybe it was kind of an homage to that, but this is a very, I mean, it's one of Tarantino's trademarks at this point. That scene is one of his staples, right? So yeah, I feel like I wish I could remember my initial reaction to it, but I couldn't tell you why that scene is the one that stuck out in this movie to other people. I don't have an answer for you. I'm willing to listen to what you have to say about it, Shane.
I feel like there's two things that really stick out, and one of them, Alex, you brought up is like this is the most brutal scene in the whole entire movie. Like it's just hard to forget. Like watching this crazy sadistic man dancing away to this fun poppy rock song from the 1970s as he's about to mutilate this man and light him on fire. Mm-hmm. It's the kind of thing where it's just like it just burns in your brain because it's so messed up. But I feel like, and we're talking pretty in depth about this scene, so spoiler alert to the film is this scene ends on the biggest twist in the movie. Is that I feel like this scene needed to happen to push Mr. Orange to the point of revealing himself as a police officer.
Yeah.
So like it's going so extreme out there that he intervenes. He breaks his cover and he shoots Mr. Blonde.
Mm-hmm.
And then that really sets off the conflict for the whole rest of the present time in the movie. It's just like, why'd you shoot him?
Mm-hmm.
Why'd you shoot him besides you're a cop? And trying to navigate that. And I feel like it's such an iconic moment because it's so odd and also brutal. But in the end, it's one of the biggest pivotal scenes in the film because it rips the rug out from under you. And then you have to reassess the whole entire film at that point, and it reshapes the tension and the narrative for the rest of the film. And because, you know, well, you jump right into Mr. Orange's backstory after that scene, right? And you get his whole like having to practice and doing, you know, the whole entire I'm in a bathroom scene, telling a story and everything. And it just really kicks off the film in that kind of way, in that direction. So I think it not only is it creepy and unnerving and memorable in its own right, but also it fits so importantly into how the whole rest of the film is shaped and kind of pushes the film forward.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. That's my favorite part of the whole film was the Mr. Orange section. Mm-hmm. Tim Roth is just incredible. His performance is just incredible in that movie. You know, he's great in everything, but he was just so good in that movie. The scene, it's funny because the scene itself, like so much gets made of the, you know, chopping the ear off. And it is such a violation to the cop, the human being. But in those moments, like there's the thing is you watch the movie, you listen to the way that the cops talk about the crooks and the way the crooks talk about the cops, they dehumanize each other, one another. And so the chopping the ear off is like the biggest, you know, violation. So I was going to say exactly what you said. This is what pushes him all the way right before he's about to kill him, right before he's about to shoot him. All the violent things he does, everything from slashing him in the face, you know, and throwing the gasoline into his face. All these things get kind of clouded by this beautiful pop song. Like you're like watching this shit, terrible shit happen to a human being tortured, while you're like you want to tap your foot, but you kind of stop tapping your foot the moment he slashes him in the face, because now he's not dancing anymore. Now it's like violating him. And so that is a real mind fuck. You know, it really screws with your brain. And I think that that's the technique, is to kind of have that violence while this wonderful song is being played to fuck with you, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could tell like Michael Madsen's really getting into the scene too.
He's having a blast.
Yeah, and like how he's dancing and everything, he's having a fun time and he's vibing to the music. And if I'm not mistaken, like that was ad-libbed, right? Him talking into the ear. Like when he chops off, like, hey.
Yeah.
And it's just like trying to talk into the ear to the guy afterwards. But because, you know, songs have two basic layers, right? How it fits musically into the scene, which we've started talking about. Like, it doesn't. It's the contradiction that works. This is a poppy, fun, dancey kind of song, which a sadistic killer is having fun dancing to, and then takes it to a whole other level.
Yeah, and it's not like American Psycho, where they're playing. Is it Whitney Houston or like Huey Lewis in the News?
Huey Lewis in the News.
That's the one. It's a very, very different feel in this movie than that. like, yes, he's deranged, but when he starts dancing, like you said, Alex, we're ready to start dancing with him. Like, I just watched the scene before we recorded today, and I was like, I was ready to find the humor in it. Maybe I've been watching too many like black comedies. Maybe I've been watching too much Barry lately. Too much than more than is healthy. That's what I mean. But yeah, until the moment where he actually slashes him across the eye or whatever he does there. Yeah, but the song keeps playing. It's not like the song stops at that point. The song keeps going.
But it's almost like the song keeps going, but you stop dancing. Like like it's just like the song keeps going, but now it has a whole. It's like when the record keeps playing or the song keeps going, and then you start getting into a fight with your mother. Like that's happened in my life, actually. Like the song keeps going, but now you're arguing with your girlfriend, but the radio's still on. Like, like now you hate the fucking song. Turn the radio off. Or if you've ever been in the car with someone and to deal with like the anger or whatever's going on, if you're in an argument and they turn the volume all the way up, and it's like Madonna, like at freaking 100. Like that's happened to me. Like that's what it feels like. It's like
when the dude's coming down from his getting drugged and he's just in that taxi and the guy's playing the Eagles. He's like, come on, man. You turn that off. I have a hangover. I hate the effing Eagles.
And then he kicks him out. He's
like, don't tell me what to play in my cab.
Don't tell me what to play in my cab.
But it's so interesting because like I'm looking at the lyrics of the song, and there's some interesting things on like what you can interpret and how this fits into this scene too. Because like it all starts with, well, I don't know why I came here tonight. I've got the feeling that something ain't right. I'm so scared in case I fall off my chair, and I'm wondering how I'll get down the stairs. Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. Here I am stuck in the middle with you. And I think it's kind of creepy that there's a legitimate line about being afraid of like falling out of your chair as this man's like strapped to a chair with a madman dancing in front of him. And
what about that?
And it's interesting because like Tarantino being Tarantino, I'm sure he put a lot of thought into the songs that he puts into his movies. Because like Tarantino, Scorsese, like Edgar Wright, and James Gunn, I feel like are probably the directors that come to mind first. That it's like they put an insane amount of detail into the music that goes into their movies. Like
sure.
Scorsese has, to the point that he has Robbie Robertson be the music supervisor on his movies from the band. So like obviously like he puts in a lot of effort into the music that goes into his movies. But like
Edgar Wright, sorry to interrupt. Edgar Wright did Baby Driver, right? That was an Edgar Wright film.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah,
very good. Yeah,
love that. It's got its issues, but yeah, the way he uses the music is amazing. Yeah.
Spoiler alert, it's so random, but I would love to do an episode of this show for the Alabama song for The World's End. Because it's such a random Doors song that's so perfect in the scene that they use it in that movie. But it's interesting because like who are the clowns and the jokers in this situation that we're stuck in the middle?
It's like you said before we started filming, right? It's got to be the criminals and the cops, right? And I didn't even think that much into it. I was like, oh, this is a fun pop song, and they probably just picked it randomly. No, you're right. That's there's the chair reference, there's the clowns and the jokers. He's not in the middle, right? Mr. Orange would be stuck in the middle, maybe.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, that's a very interesting thing, because who is stuck in the middle is literally Mr. Orange, who is a cop who's undercover and both physically and I guess like morally stuck in this situation. It's like, do I stick to my job that I'm doing right now and be this criminal who's dying too, bleeding out like crazy, or do I reveal myself and potentially put myself at risk? And obviously he makes the choice to save this cop, which brutally does not work out for the cop in the end, because very shortly after, because it's Chris Penn shoots him, right? The mobster's son.
Tim Roth shoots Tim Roth.
Shoots the cop in the chair.
Yes. Yeah, he comes in, he finishes the job.
Yeah. He just comes in without a beat, skipping a beat, just shoots this cop, and it's just like,
this guy?
Yeah, exactly. And how he played that scene off. And it's interesting thinking about, like, because you do have the cop who's physically stuck in between Mr. Orange and Mr. Blonde in this scene, and you have Mr. Orange who's stuck in this situation of, do I stick to the plan, or do I do what my coply duties are and try to protect this other cop? And it's interesting, some of the other lyrics too, because I find these set of lyrics very interesting, trying to make some sense of it all, but I can see it makes no sense at all. Is it cool to go to sleep on the floor? Because I don't think I can take anymore. And kind of what that's given vibes to me is that us? Because like, we are having fun for part of this scene. We're enjoying this song, and then at what point is this not cool anymore? Which, like Alex, you mentioned, like the second he starts slicing into the cop, we're just like, oh,
right.
Should I not be having fun with this anymore?
Right. Exactly. I was really glad that they cut away for the ear cutting itself. And I don't know that Tarantino would have even cut away, I don't know, in recent years. Like if this was not his first film, if this was later Tarantino, he probably would have just gone all out. But I appreciated that they actually panned away.
But that's an interesting thought. I never really thought about that.
But the song keeps playing, like we just mentioned.
Restraint has kind of fallen out the window.
It's one of the best shots in the film when he pans over, so somehow there's something about that. It's just, he's obviously still learning how to direct a film, through a lot of this movie, but that's one of the best shots in the movie. Yeah.
And then Mr. Blonde creepily coming back in the frame, talking into like the ear and stuff like that, and you're just like, what the hell happened?
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if you guys knew, but they did shoot him like cutting a prosthetic ear. If you watch like they did. There was like they shot it from different angles, and just in like the unfinished footage, it doesn't look like a real ear. And that might have been one of the reasons why they decided to do it the way they did it. But I think it's a blessing in disguise.
Well, that happens a lot when effects don't work and you have to work around it.
Yeah, it also happens when you only have $2 million to make your movie.
True. Well, that shark was supposed to be in a lot of that movie, but shark didn't work. So look how Jaws turned out.
Exactly. Well, no, that's a whole other conversation. And it's a good question. Like, what would he do today? But I think, you're making basically an independent film. It's going to be indie. It's going to feel indie. It's going to feel gritty. And I think that's a big part of it. And why the scene is the way it is because it's it's really an indie flick. It's Tarantino before Tarantino. He's not really Tarantino yet.
Do you guys know if he submitted this to any festivals? Was this on the festival circuit?
Oh yeah, well I think it was on it. I mean, Sundance definitely. I don't think it went to Cannes, or if it did, I don't think it got.
This feels like a Sundance film,
but it was definitely Sundance. Totally.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, I admit, because like Pulp Fiction went to Cannes, right?
Pulp Fiction won the Palme d'Or at Cannes.
Yeah, I'm pretty
you know,
sure.
but
Very timely as we're recording this is Cannes going on.
oh yeah,
But yeah, it premiered at the Sundance Film Festival January 1992,
Huh.
and then was picked up by Miramax.
Okay.
oh, they distributed.
Yeah, after being shown at
There you
several
go.
other festivals, including Cannes,
Right.
Sitges. I don't know if I know that one. And Toronto. It got opened in 19 theaters October 9th, 1992, and then started rolling out. So there you go.
There you go.
What I'm wondering is how much money they had to pay Steelers Wheel to use this song, and how they convinced Steelers Wheel to let them use this song during this particular kind of scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if you have to disclose what you're going to do with it, or if you just need to get permission, and then, that maybe they didn't know, is my point. Maybe, what are the two brothers? They say it in the film. The word
on the radio.
diegetic comes to mind. Thank you, Vinny. Whatever the two brothers are who were in Steelers Wheel, right? Maybe they didn't know what the content of the scene was going to be.
Yeah, they're a Scottish folk rock band from Paisley, Scotland.
Oh, wow.
Former school friends Joe Egan and Jerry Rafferty.
Jerry Rafferty. That's okay. I remember that. Okay.
So they weren't brothers. Okay.
Who did songs like Baker Street, Right Down the Line, Night Out. I know the song Baker Street.
So they were in a one-hit wonder.
Well, I guess Jerry Rafferty wasn't.
Okay.
Right Down the Line, they wrote that song too?
Well, Jerry Rafferty did.
Wow, okay.
Oh, okay.
So I think they broke up in 1975, and Jerry Rafferty started doing his own stuff.
His own thing.
Which he seemed to become successful as a solo artist. And then they got back to so they were a band from 72 to 75, reunited in 2008 for like a year. But so like I feel like it would be interesting if they knew. I feel like depending on the band, like some of them definitely want to know how you use their music before they give you permission. Like bands like Led Zeppelin, who are so insanely picky,
and
about Queen like unless it's Bohemian Rhapsody, and then they just whore out their entire discography for it.
Made it a hit. That maybe was a bigger hit after Wayne's World. But
oh my god, that would be a great song about.
That'd be a good scene. Yeah, totally. But I mean, I'm sure a lot of bands don't know exactly how it's going to get used. I'm sure they're just happy that it's getting used. Yeah, they're going to get.
I'm sure Steelers Wheel in like the early '90s was like,
they're going to get
our music.
There's got to be some sort of paycheck attached to that. There's got to be,
but not much of maybe in a $2 million film.
I'm not sure. I don't know, but you could license. But Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez would license. I don't know the process of how that works. They would license songs, and then they would license songs that were used in other movies, so they can use them in their movies. So I don't even know what that means, but
I have a question for you guys. How much classic rock? I've seen Pulp Fiction now. Pulp Fiction's got a weird soundtrack, but it's not classic rock. Like, how much classic rock is in the Tarantino catalog? There can't be that much.
Well, I guess he used, obviously, Dick Dale's like that surf rock music for like, is it Miserlou? Is that how you say it? So like, obviously that's like the theme of Pulp Fiction. But he uses a wide range of different music in all of his movies. Except that Jackie Brown's pretty consistent with the kind of music that it's using, but like music's all over the place in all of his movies. And like he uses Steve Miller in Does he use Steve Miller in Reservoir Dogs too?
For what song?
I'm trying to remember.
The Miller Band.
Um, I'm trying to think of the other songs in this movie, like a Little Green Bag they
Yeah.
use, which is like the iconic like them walking through the parking lot scene, and
Yeah.
then Jungle Boogie.
Mhm.
So
Well, it's all, correct me if I'm wrong. Is it they're all talking John, that's all 70s.
yeah,
They're all talking 70s. And it's K Billy Super Sounds of the 70s. And Tarantino was very much almost like a 70s revivalist filmmaker and film and 70s revivalist artist. And we didn't grow up in the 70s, but we still kind of look back at that decade like it had all these like little golden nuggets of culture and pop culture with the movies and the music. And there's something special about the way they recorded music at that time, like some of the analog recordings, um, like Fleetwood Mac. Some of that stuff was, the drums and the bass just sounded amazing at that time. So much better, in my opinion, of like
us.
the way things sounded like in the 80s, and the 90s. Although I know people have varying opinions about that sort of thing. But everything kind of feels, that's why a lot of his films, I think a lot of the music he uses is coming from that era. And a lot of the references he's making to movies coming from that era, and he does that through a lot of his filmography, you know.
Yeah,
So
he used Blue Swedes, Hooked on a Feeling.
I just saw that. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's Harry Nilsson, there's Blue
Ooga
Swede,
yaka, ooga, ooga,
there's
ooga.
Sandy Rogers, like you said, Little Green Bag.
Even something
Really
like
good stuff.
you look at like Django Unchained has Tupac on it, has John Legend on it, it has Ennio Morricone on it, it has Jim Croce on it. It's just like,
Croce.
Did they use Jim
yeah,
Croce in that movie?
you
That's
got a
Yeah,
name.
that's how I got into Jim Croce, was
oh,
because
that's
of
right.
he's got a name that, of course.
Oh no, I 100% heard Jim Croce all over 98.1 WOGL when I was growing up.
Well,
Uh,
he was a Philly guy. I never knew he was from Philly. I thought he was from Georgia or Nebraska or something like.
You would think. You would
Yeah.
think.
but in general, Tarantino makes some very interesting choices in music and gives us iconic scenes like this.
Yes.
And you can't walk into you can't walk around in a black suit with a thin black tie and not think about Pulp Fiction, or
A
walk through a
Reservoir
parking
Dogs.
lot in your suits without Little Green Bag. It's
Yeah.
it's that kind of thing.
He,
But I
you're right though. Like he does, like when he writes a scene, and I don't know if it's necessarily as he's writing it or when he goes back and edits it, he does imagine certain songs for those scenes. I don't know about Stuck in the Middle with You, but it feels very intentional. Yeah, especially as you guys start analyzing the lyrics. I'm like, oh damn, like holy crap, that makes a lot of sense. But he definitely did it for stuff like in Pulp Fiction when he uses Son of a Preacher Man when
yep.
Vincent Vega's walking in. He's like, he had that song in mind for like a year or a year and a half for that scene.
Mhm.
And so, because it takes a long freaking time before you can shoot these damn things,
Yeah.
and so he's constantly meditating on these thoughts and ideas for songs, and you know, yeah. So there's that. I think that's why there's that flow to the scene with the music. It's very intentional. Um, yeah,
Yeah, it's when you make 10 movies over the course of 35 years, you have time to marinate
right,
on it
exactly.
and really try to figure those kinds of things out. Like you're not getting that opportunity as much when you're pumping out like a new movie every year. Looking
Right.
at you, Clint. That's okay. He makes up for it by filming a whole entire scene in 16 minutes. And then moving on to the next one.
The next one. I'm getting old. I don't have time.
Which it's funny because apparently he's like the coolest, calmest director to work for. He's just like, well, Go ahead. I don't imagine Tarantino being on set at all.
Oh, I've heard
I
he's
imagine him
pretty.
being a neurotic mess and just being like,
He's super fucking. And he could be a real hard ass. What I've heard. Yeah.
yeah, just ask Diane Kruger.
Oh Jesus. Yeah. Sure.
Awkward. But do either of you have any final thoughts on Stuck in the Middle with You and Reservoir Dogs?
I feel like he bottled some lightning here. Like I don't, I don't know
Mhm.
a whole lot more now than I did at the beginning of this recording. Why that scene worked so well, or maybe it just shocked people into like it just got stuck in their brain. But like this is the fact that I knew this scene before I'd watched the movie, and this was back in 2000, I don't know, 10-ish. Is that when we were in college together? um, yeah, I something worked there. I don't know if that's just you can attribute that to genius. I know you guys are way bigger Tarantino fans than I am, but something about the way that scene was put together seems to have really it has legs, you know.
Mhm. Yeah. I um. It's so weird. Uh, I actually have a hard time watching Reservoir Dogs from start to finish now because I saw it so many times when I was in high school and college and watched it. I would watch like all his films, like start to finish and backwards. I was crazy about him. But I do think that like now when I watch it, I still have an appreciation for certain scenes. Usually it's not this one. I always appreciate the song. I love the opening diner scene. I do love when he does wake up and shoots Mr. Blonde and that whole Mr. Orange section, the commode story when he's in the bathroom with the German Shepherd barking at him.
Yeah.
You know, I love that. That's one of my favorite Tarantino scenes ever. Actually, I want to talk about that scene. But you know, but this is the scene that shocked everybody. This is the one that everyone talked about when it came out and everybody talked about, ever since. So it makes sense to talk about it. I think that I think without this scene, the movie's missing something really, like it's really sorely missing something, like that Texas Chainsaw Massacre sort of like it needs to go that far before it can bring you back down to earth. And so I think that's why it's there and that's why it's needed. But I will say that when I watch Reservoir Dogs now, I see, as a Tarantino kind of fan or amateur historian of Tarantino, it's like the best script he ever wrote, possibly. It's the most compact, the most concise. Like the plot is probably the most clear and the best without having, you compare it to Hateful Eight, all the shit that happens in that. It's like, it's comes like just on paper, it's so convoluted. What's going on in that? Like this is pretty compact. This is a really well written script, but he's like, you watch the finished product of it. This guy's still learning how to make a movie. Like now, like I can see all the flaws now after seeing like Hateful Eight is so beautiful. Like it's directed so well. But this is more spontaneous. Reservoir Dogs still feels more on the seat of its pants. Like he's still learning, and some of that still learning makes the movie great to look back on because like he made choices that he might have, and he knows this. He made choices then that he might have not made now that would have made Reservoir Dogs more sluggish. It would have dragged its feet. It would have, like, yeah, he might have had more money to make the ear thing look better, or he might have spent another 45 minutes on the Mr. White character. Like, but because he was young and naive, he ended up making this kind of like independent cult classic that gave him this director of the 90s and the new director of our generation sort of thing. It would have been very different had he made it today. They've had talks, by the way, of him remaking it. My brother's like, yeah, I really want to see him do that. I'm like, no, that's a terrible idea. It's a terrible idea. Don't remake Reservoir. It's fine.
Everybody complains about remakes, and then somebody like Tarantino's like, I'm gonna remake my own movie.
Yeah, it's like, I'll think of. He's had 10 ideas about like things he could do with the Vega brothers, and like all this other noise. It's like, dude, no, just leave that alone. It's just it's gonna be, let somebody else. If somebody else wants to do it, great idea. That'd be awesome with different actors and a different voice. That would be cool. But no, like,
Can you just imagine Reservoir Dogs with all the same actors?
now they would kill each other. They would kill each other.
I would want it to be like a Korean film or a Japanese film if they were going to remake it.
Well, that would make sense. That would actually make sense.
You know what? It has a lot of those vibes. It has a lot of Hong Kong vibes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
It'd be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea. Yeah.
But if it were going to be redone, I would like it to be done flashy. I wouldn't want somebody else to. I kind of feel this way about cover songs too. Like, if you're gonna do somebody else's song or movie, like, do it different. Bring a fresh take to it. You know what I mean? Don't make another gritty movie about a gritty movie. So I think that'd be cool if it was like a Korean film. I would definitely see that.
That'd be a lot of fun. That would be a lot of fun to see that, because there's so many holes you can poke into it and do, like, there's so many different directions. There's so many characters in there. There's the Mr. Pink character. I mean, what the fuck? Does he get away? Does he not get away? That's the big debate. Like, you could have a lot of fun with that. Yeah.
The question is, would they still use Stuck in the Middle with You?
What's the style now? Like, you can't use the same exact music.
It can't be a 70s hits. I imagine if it's like a Hong Kong film, it's just a whole bunch of like Chinese covers of all the songs. Would be really interesting.
Like a Walmart CD of the 70s hits.
They could borrow mine.
I'm thinking of did you guys see Squid Game? Alex probably know, yeah.
I saw like the first like 4 episodes.
Okay, so the first
violent.
episode of Squid Game, they're doing Fly Me to the Moon while like hundreds of people are getting murdered. It's a real, I don't know, it's not dissimilar to what Tarantino's doing in this scene.
Was that the one where they're playing the stop and go game? And they're getting that. Oh my God, that's fucking horrifying, dude.
Red light, green light.
Red light, green light.
Oh, name of the episode too, I think.
So much.
Yeah, that was that was a good show. I just think it was too much. I think it was too much. Like, Tarantino, eat your heart out. Fuck.
I bet Tarantino loves it. But see, you got a whole bunch of extra. Maybe we'll get a Reservoir Dogs remake. Who would you want to see make it? And what kind of music do you want to hear in it? But Jim and impromptu Alex, thank you so much for coming on and talking about Stuck in the Middle with you from Reservoir Dogs.
Oh, you're welcome, Shane. Sorry, I was waiting for the recording to end.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. This is so much fun. I love it. I love it when things are spontaneous like this. My favorite thing in the world.
Just love when the rug, when that rug really pulls the room together. But thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.